this future in front of us. So I appreciate anything that anyone might have to add on what makes it disruptive technology and how do we overcome the this future problem.
Okay. I'll take a shot. So I mean, my actual answer for this makes me sound a little bit like a lunatic, but I've been in the house for 2 days. So one of the things that I really like about having the opportunity to work on 3D printing, and 3D printing is really sort of the gateway drug for all sorts of digital manufacturing and hardware, open source hardware things. But one of the things I really like about 3D printing is that the more you get involved with it, the more it actually sort of changes the way that you see the world around you. All of a sudden, and in really kind of pedestrian ways, but all of a sudden you see problems that you didn't recognize as problems before, and problems you did see before, you see solutions. You feel, you feel empowered to solve them. And so it really does kind of change the way that I relate to the world around me, because all of a sudden I now have this ability. If I have, if there's a problem on my computer or on the internet, there are ways to solve it because you can code, or you can find someone else who coded, or find a program, whatever it is. But when you're in the physical world, if you traditionally don't have access to a factory or a shop in your basement because you don't have a basement or whatever it is, your ability to manipulate the world around you and solve those physical problems was relatively limited, especially as compared to kind of software problems. But when you get into a place where if you can imagine the solution to it and then you just sort of go at it and it becomes there, not because someone else has figured it out, because that's your answer, it really does change how you see the world. And so when I think of disruptive technologies, to actually answer your question, I think of them as technologies that do change the way, in some significant way, you view the world around you. And that's the kind of thing that makes them exciting. It makes them exciting certainly to me, and I hope other people with the same kind of technology. I assume it's the same sort of thing for both of you.
So when I think of disruptive technology, I think of Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma. And he sort of has a bunch of criteria for what makes technology truly disruptive. And one thing that's interesting to me is that most disruptive technologies tend to have in common that when they are first introduced, they're cheaper than the existing technology, but they're worse. They're not as good. And so people dismiss them because they're like, well, why would I use this? It's cheaper, I get it, but the results aren't good. So take PCs. When PCs were first introduced, they were cheaper than mainframe, but a mainframe is so much better. Why would you use a why would you use a PC instead of a mainframe? There's a business thinking. Why would anybody want a PC in every home? It doesn't do very much, right? The PC, when it was first introduced, you had to program it before you could use it. You had to learn programming to use it. I think with 3D printing, it's probably the same thing, where right now, why would I use a 3D printer when I have these CNC machines? And sure, it's cheaper, but it doesn't do very much. It makes these little plasticky heads. And with BitCoin, it's exactly the same, where yes, it's cheaper, but it doesn't do as much. We already have Visa, PayPal, MasterCard, and they're everywhere, and they're accepted. And what ends up happening is that somebody develops a killer application that truly disrupts the existing businesses. And with the PC, it was the invention of VisiCalc, which is for a spreadsheet. All of a sudden, PCs took off, and why did you need a mainframe? Mainframe is overkill. Right? I think we've yet to see what that is with 3D printing and BitCoin, but all of the signs of this being truly disruptive are there.
So I agree with that. In my world, it's actually some of it is flipped around. So the Library of Congress, their public websites like congress.gov have to be everything to everyone. Their mandate is to provide legislative information to the world. And actually, that makes it a lot easier for folks on the outside to come in and create better products very quickly that focuses on a small segment that congress.gov can't address very well. So in legislative data, it's actually, I think we get better products with serving smaller communities. How to identify it? So it's we're all talking about early stage emerging technology, so it's hard to know if it's actually disruptive yet. But I like to think, so do you guys know what the title of the head of the government printing office is? It's the public printer. So, right, it's not like the head of the government printing office, the title is public printer. So there's like no, dot matrix printers or whatever, who's doing printing? So there's a bill introduced a couple of days ago to rename the government printing office the government publishing office. So to take it from sort of this physical idea to this concept that actually information dissemination and data and actually publish a lot of raw data is really important. So in terms of how do I know whether what we're doing is a disruptive technology, I think the idea that a federal, not department, but I don't know what you do, a top-level legislative branch support agency might get renamed because of this data stuff. I think that's a good sign.
Well, let's open it up to questions from the floor.
This one is for Jerry about BitCoin, kind of the future political responses. You mentioned the possibility for federal preemption of state laws, the popularity that law enforcement has for Bitcoin versus hard currency because it's less anonymous. Could you see a situation where kind of government gets overboard in liking the possibility of electronic currencies so much that we have kind of like Bitcoin.gov, where the federal role is almost overwhelming the electronic currency, so you've lost some of the free market side, but it's still cheaper and faster than what we have now. What are some of the downsides of that?
So it's a good question. First, let me just say on the federal preemption that's something that I just don't have as a thought experiment. I don't think it's on the cards right now. I think you have 48 states. People are waiting to see how they're going to react. It's something that might come down the road. I don't think much political liability for it right now. So look, I think that, boy, you're proposing is that the federal government loves Bitcoin so much that it just hugs it to death. And that's not a future that I am worried about. Partly because there's a lot of uncertainty. We have yet to see how the IRS is going to address Bitcoin. I think the CFTC at some point will become involved, especially if we have the emergence of decentralized futures markets based on Bitcoin. And I'm not sure that any of those reactions are going to be just rolling out the red carpet. They're probably going to be much more cautious. But even taking the premise of your question and saying, could the federal government hug Bitcoin to death? I'm not sure that's possible precisely because it is decentralized. So you might hug to death some of the intermediaries of the Bitcoin network. So for example, if you want to open up a Bitcoin wallet, you have an online wallet, you might go to a company like Coinbase. Coinbase is a very popular online wallet service, and you can transfer dollars there, convert it to Bitcoin. Now you can use this. Coinbase is also a merchant service company, so if you're a merchant, you want to accept payments in Bitcoin, you can use Coinbase. They'll set up all the software for you. BigPay is another popular one. So you can imagine that these companies will be regulated, and that they are going to be required to, in fact, they are required to keep records of all their customers, all their transactions, et cetera, et cetera. But you still have the option, because Bitcoin is open, it's an open network, to launch your own wallet software on your own computer and transact with somebody else who has their own computer. So you don't have to use intermediaries. So in that respect, I think we get the best of both worlds. We get choice for consumers.
Traditionally, one of the hallmarks of creative destruction is that there are concentrated companies that lose out. We're already seeing that in the case of Uber, with the taxi companies fighting it, with Airbnb, the hotel industry fighting it. What industries do you all see, from things that you identified and perhaps others, where the industries that will be negatively affected might try to take action to suppress these disruptive technologies?
So I'll start. In the Bitcoin space, the first and most obvious is money transfer businesses. So for example, Western Union, because what they provide is simply moving money from point A to point B. And that's something that Bitcoin directly competes with. If they're smart, they might adopt the Bitcoin technology to improve their own technology. Then you have other payment processors, like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. These, I think, are less in direct competition because they offer services that Bitcoin does not, right? So for that merchant fee, you get something in return, which is that you can, as a consumer, you get fraud protection. You can return, what's the word I'm looking for, reverse a charge, et cetera, not all costs money, so you get insurance along with that. What Bitcoin introduces here is a new choice for folks. Looking long term, it could be different kinds of markets. Right? So whether you're talking about stock exchanges or commodities future trading exchanges, these could be decentralized in a way where people could do business the way they do it on an exchange without the need for a broker intermediary. That's really, really long term, 3 years, let's say, really long term. I'll stop there.
No questions, yes, sir.
My question is for Jerry as well. Jerry, you're talking about how Bitcoin is completely open and anybody can see the transactions and how the future transactions cannot be stopped. Well, say my Bitcoin information gets stolen in that open. I mean, with Visa, you can call Visa and they can literally shut off your credit card. And so, how do you protect the individual, the consumer's privacy?
So that's a good question. So a couple of things. Number one, Bitcoin is like cash. So if your Bitcoins are stolen, there's nothing inherent in the Bitcoin protocol that makes it easier or less easy to steal Bitcoins. It's just like, it's computer security, it's cybersecurity. If I can break into your computer and steal your Word documents or your photos, and you have Bitcoins, I can also steal your Bitcoins. It's like cash, right? So having Bitcoin on your computer is like having money under your mattress. Okay, so it can be stolen. So,
But if they can't stop future transactions,
it can't be stopped.
so then that costs me money and not her.
Yes. So if I break into, if you have your money in your mattress and I break into your home, it costs you money if I take it away. So you can choose to do things like insure, right? You can put it in a bank. Banks today pay you interest. You might imagine a world where you have Bitcoin banks that pay you interest on deposits and also insure your deposits there. We can imagine, all of this. But let me flip it around a little bit. So recently, Target had this breach, and all of these credit cards were stolen. So now we have to, as you say, cut. And the reason we have to stop this is because with a credit card number, I can charge, basically, the merchant has access to the line of credit on that credit card. With Bitcoin, if I steal your Bitcoin, or first of all, if I have your Bitcoin address, I can't charge it. Right? Bitcoin is a push technology. Okay, so maybe this is the best way to answer it. Whereas credit cards are a pull technology, which means you give a credit card, you give a merchant, you give Target your credit card number, they withdraw the amount for your purchase, right? So in order to make a $20 purchase at Target, you have to give Target access to the $20,000 line of credit that you have, which is, kind of interesting, right? With Bitcoin, it's a push technology. When it's time for you to pay a Target, you give them $20, and that is it. They don't have access to any of the other money that you have. Does that make sense?
But yeah, that makes sense.